Hello, everyone.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, Donna. Okay, seeing that I have 6 o'clock, we'll get this show on the road, seeing that there's really not much for us to handle tonight. First thing we'll do is call to order. I no longer have to read the no anchor site determination letter, but just so anybody who's listening or watching, it is filed and you can reference that in all the materials. Okay, second, we'll do roll call. Bruce?
Here.
Donna?
Here.
Glynis?
I just admitted her. She'll be on in 1 second.
There she
Your
is.
voice has gotten deeper, Glynis.
He was
Brian?
quiet all day.
Okay, and Tony's
There I
here.
am.
There you are. Okay,
It
Rachel,
was-
you're here, so unless Ryan shows up late, you get to vote if we have anything to vote on today.
Okay.
All right, first thing will be the approval of the April 15th meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments on them?
I have a minor edit. People say I add too many that's, so I might be adding too many that's. On line 22, prior,
Page.
I'm sorry, page 2 of 3, line 22. She stated that she, Mr. Eddington, and Mr. Taylor. Minor edit. Does that make more sense or no?
I'm still trying to open it.
Oh, sorry.
1 sec. I'll go ahead and make the edit so we don't.
Okay.
I'll take care of that.
But that was all, that was it.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on, or anything on that April 15th minutes? There being no more comments, we'll take a vote on accepting. Oh, does somebody want to make a motion to accept them? I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
And thank you. Okay, so we'll take a vote. Bruce?
I was absent, so I'm gonna not vote on them.
Okay. Donna?
Yes.
Gwyneth?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Bruce, you were here for the 15th. You were the acting chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the 28th.
No.
Okay. Then I did look at those and I'm fine with them. Yeah.
Okay, and I will abstain because I wasn't here for those. So therefore, those meetings will be accepted. Now we'll move on to the special meeting, the minutes of that from April 28th. Does anybody have any comments on those?
Not me.
Sure.
You sure,
Yeah.
Glynis?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, that being that there's no comments, does anybody would anybody like to make a motion to accept them?
I move that we accept the April 28th special meeting minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, do I get? Thank you. Okay, so then we'll take it to a vote. Bruce, I'm assuming you'll abstain because you weren't here.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Glynis,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
and Tony's a yes. Therefore, the minutes of the April 28th special meeting are accepted. Okay, that being done, The only item on the agenda is the update for the claim retaining wall. So, Thomas, have you had any discussions going forward with them in regard to that?
I have actually, and if you want, maybe what I could do is if I can share screen, I can kind of walk you through some of the renderings that they've submitted, some of
Sure.
the changes and updates. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. Uh-oh. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Okay, so basically what we had discussed a couple of months ago was what the applicant had started to do with their retaining walls. And if you remember, I think that they had originally proposed kind of a stacked rock retaining wall. As they got into it and were working through some of their issues, ensuring stability and strength of retaining walls, they also, from a design perspective, wanted to go with something a little bit more modern. So they went with the gabion basket wall with the rock. And so Ryan and I had met with them on site and just noted that while we're generally comfortable with it, we probably needed some updated drawings. And it was something that we felt should be at least seen by the planning commission and allow for the planning commission to provide input. So as you can see here, that was what we had originally presented back in March. I'll come back to this in a second, but they submitted a series of about 8 renderings. And so you can see this here. You can see the retaining walls that would go along this main entry drive. You can also see that they've kind of got a sign based on the same kind of design aesthetic out front with the claim logo on it for the site signage. Again, trying to integrate the retaining walls into the signage. You'll also note that and this will be more apparent in subsequent slides, but we worked closely with them to incorporate a lot more landscaping in this area. So in the terracing area, between walls, it would be grasses because we're not allowed to have much irrigation up there, any irrigation up there, because it can compromise the strength, the integrity of the retaining walls. But they can do grasses, natives, etc. But the idea here was to get some trees, to get some vertical breaks in those walls, no matter whether they're natural stone walls or whether they're the gabion basket walls with natural stones in them. They're going to appear pretty high. And so we wanted to make sure that that was addressed. If I come down here, I think it starts to get a little bit easier to see some of the proposal. So here you can see the signage out front. It looks like, I think what they're proposing is, I don't think, Chris Ensign, are you on? I don't think he's on. I text him. But I think what this would be proposed as is probably core 10, that kind of rusty metal, and with a cutout for the claim, which is kind of a nice design aesthetic. And again, the retaining walls would primarily line that entry driveway. We zoom in a little bit and take a couple of different angles down here. You can see the driveway in. You can see that there's been landscaping, street trees, shrubs, grasses incorporated to kind of soften some of those corners. At the last meeting, a number of the planning commissioners had some concerns about kind of softening the kind of harshness of the retaining wall. Here's the other angle from the actual building looking out toward the entryway. Landscaping in front of the wall and incorporated up on top. Grasses would be in the actual terraced areas. We can't get trees in there due to roots and water. And you can see those grasses right along here. So we have been working closely with Chris Ensign, who is working with Seth Bachholt Landscape Architecture. They do great design work. And I think that they have tried to address all of the concerns. Again, you can start to see the grasses here before it gets out of the retaining walls, where there will be additional landscaping to break up the height of the building, the mass, etc. And then I think this is the last couple. This is kind of zoomed in a little bit on the sign, so you can see, again, the Core 10 metal sign, the claim logo, and, oh, it's another one of grasses in the retaining walls, looking down, and then kind of an aerial bird's eye view of the retaining walls. That's what we have. I don't know if you have any questions. I don't think Chris is on yet. He said he was going to try to join if there were any specific questions that I can't answer, but I am willing to take a shot at it based on what we presented.
Thomas, I have a question. Correct me if I'm wrong, and Bruce, I think you were the one who raised the issue. I mean, I think for the most part, most of us had some concerns in regard to that type of retaining wall and asked them to look at something else. Only because of the way it was stacked in sort of those, for lack of a better term, almost like the sleeves, you know?
Right. And
It
so,
just looks bundled.
and it is by design, it is kind of a bundled concept. It's those gabion baskets, that metal basket, and the natural rock is incorporated in the basket. And so I don't think that Ryan is on either. When I had initially gone out there, I had some concerns about kind of the starkness, the modern kind of characteristic of the walls as well. When we started to work with the site engineers, and I think it's IGES and Ryan's team, they felt that the gabion basket had a bit more structural integrity rather than just stacking rocks. And so I think what we thought is try to work within that framework and soften it up. We did go back and look at opportunities to go back to stacked rock. Again, I think that from a structural integrity standpoint, the engineers felt that this was a little bit of a better option. They had done a lot more analysis on this option, given the height of the walls and this terracing. And so from a health, safety, welfare perspective, we started to lean this direction and work closely with the applicant to get a landscape architect to bring in some opportunities to soften the walls. Again, the grasses, the trees, et cetera, so that they didn't look as stark as they do right now, and they will before the landscaping is installed. So that's kind of where we landed.
The height of the walls.
How high are some of the walls, Thomas?
I don't have exact measurements, but I would say this wall right here, which is probably one of the higher walls. This one is right, I'm kind of at the condo building, kind of looking down the entry road. This one's probably
6 feet.
Oh no, I bet it's 8 to 10 feet.
I think it's closer to 10.
Yeah, I bet if I were to stand right next to it, I don't think I have one of me out there, but I bet I'd be close to right around this line right here. So those are about 10 feet. Keep in mind, these walls were approved under the prior code, so we don't have the limits that are in the current code.
I like these walls myself. I know Bruce, you didn't, but I like them. And my concern actually with the ones that we have all around us now, somebody pointed out to Donna and I that the ones that are out there now, they're using natural stone and it's starting to fall apart. And so I think these might actually be better.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because early on I did look at these and at first I thought, ooh, a little stark, a little bit modern. I have to be honest with you, right? But once I worked with Ryan and the engineers, they basically validate what you're saying, that these are a little bit more structurally sound. They have better structural integrity, right? And they've also done a lot more analysis on these particular walls than on the stacked walls. And so once that was the issue in terms of, taking into account health, safety, welfare, balancing that with design and aesthetics, that's when we went back to the landscape architect, and really tried to soften these and, get them kind of to mesh a little bit more with the natural landscape than they do. But yeah, I think the engineers would support what you're saying, actually.
Thomas, correct?
I was just-
Correct me if I'm wrong, but with the picture you showed us where it's about 10 feet high, they can't plant anything in front of those to soften them, can they? Because that's a walkway.
No, they can plant. They're proposing to plant in front of those. That is what they are proposing. Yeah.
So that, was
Oh,
that
they are.
ever a walkway?
I don't know that that was ever proposed to be a walkway. It's not to say that maybe we can't get some rock or weave a little walkway in there, but they are proposing to put plants in there and try to get some columnar trees in there as well, just to soften them.
I did notice, if you scroll down on the other side of the street, there's a walkway. Well, you can see the start of it by the sign, but
Oh yeah, you could see it right
Yeah.
here. Right here.
yeah.
Let me see if I can find that image. Oh, there you go. So
Yeah.
walkway, I guess
So there is a
here,
sidewalk on the other side of the street.
and then it crosses over up there, I guess. Yeah. And that might have been a change actually, because I think we were initially there at our couple of months ago when we were working with Chris Ensign. I think we were thinking about try to get trees in there to break up the harshness of the walls, right? And maybe we can weave a path in there. So maybe this has been a revision, and then there's a cross up there, which is actually kind of a nice touch.
Is that walkway on a plan anywhere, or is it just on this picture? Because this picture is not really representing what it's going to look like, since they can't plant trees on the top.
Well,
So-
actually, they can't plant trees on the top. They can't plant them in the terracing. These trees are all in front of the building. They're not in the terracing area. The terracing, so they're right back here. Once the walls stop and they get back to stable ground, they can plant trees. Where they cannot plant trees, if you could see my cursor, is kind of right in this area here.
Okay.
They can't
And-
plant them between the two walls where it's terraced. We
My
will.
question, Thomas, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but there's those baskets are not, again, I think a little misrepresenting in these pictures. I think they look much better in these pictures because they're showing a larger rock than what's actually in there. And I guess a little bit of a concern is what's behind these walls so that the soil doesn't leach through and disappear over time. Is there some sort of a barrier behind the wall, or is it just these baskets which the soil can kind of percolate through eventually?
No, I think that there is a barrier. And in fact, I mean, if you wanted, I could actually text Ryan real quickly, because I know that he and his team did a pretty thorough analysis. I don't have that detailed analysis, and that was done actually even before between the last meeting and this meeting. But I could ask him. But my understanding is typically these walls are built, they're structurally, there is a structural membrane behind the actual rock that is in the gabion basket, so that soil doesn't leach through.
Okay.
And to answer your other question, and that was, is the sidewalk located on that plan? I don't think that they finalized the sidewalk with these proposed revisions with the retaining walls and landscaping, but that would be a requirement after this meeting. These are just conceptual.
And is there any way that they could put bigger rock in there? Do they have choices on the size of the rock?
We can certainly work with the landscape architect to get a greater variety of rock and see if they could get some larger rock in there, especially in the areas that are more exposed, because it sounds like you think that's more vernacular. It's more local to the area. I tend to agree with you. So we could ask them to go as big as they can go per the structural specs for these. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not a fan of what's there now. It doesn't really look like this. And I think from a maintenance perspective, while they may be good solid walls, I think over time, just like with stacked rock walls, you're going to have some maintenance, because this is metal and it's going to rust or corrode over time.
That's
so. And the same with any trees that they plant in front. It's not easy to grow trees around here. So over time, I assume they're going to put in a budget, where the HOA will maintain and keep the trees there and whatever other growth that they're going to put in front of it.
That's what we're asking of them. And also we're asking that the trees, the landscaping, be put on drip irrigation, especially for the first 3 to 5 years. And we're trying to work with them closely to get it in this fall, not next spring. They tend to do better if trees tend to do better if they're put in the fall, planted in the fall, so they can winter over
Two
winter.
growing seasons in before the summer.
And what is
Thomas,
the-
can we also ask them anything they're gonna put in front of these walls? To basically look at putting stuff in that's a little bit more, I don't wanna say full grown, but more,
Mhm.
more mature than just
Yep.
some seedling stuff, so some of the wall is covered right off the bat.
Yes, in fact, for most of the landscape plants, just so you all know, we are trying to spec a very minimum of 1.5-inch caliper, and we're trying to get actually in the 2-inch caliper. It can be a little harder in our soils. Going too big can be a little bit rough for establishment, but we are not allowing like the 5 gallons, 10 gallons anymore. We have increased the sizes, and that's true for Deer Springs as well. You know, the phase 1 that's up over there, you've seen the back of the houses where the trail is.
Yeah.
There's a significant landscape screen plan that will be going up this summer to screen those folks from State Road 248, and also a tree plan along the trail system in Deer Springs. And we're also speccing minimum sizes there as well. So definitely we will go with minimum 1.5 or greater.
Okay.
So I'm questioning the landscaping on the top part. Like some of those trees are so big that it seems to me they're going to actually block the views of some of the houses up there.
I think that this is a rendering by the landscape architect. I suspect those would probably put in as more deciduous trees and probably a little bit more area. They certainly wouldn't be that scale at that size at time of planting, but we'll work with them to make sure that they preserve the views. I think they were just trying to illustrate that they do have space up there to put in some significant tree coverage.
Okay, I think that would be an important thing to make sure you're not going to block views.
And what's the lifespan of these walls? I'm sure it outlives all of us, but just curious. 50 years?
That is a good question. As we're talking through some other issues, I am texting Ryan right now. I don't know the exact answer to that.
Okay.
That's what Ryan said the last time. He said the lifespan was
Okay.
50. It can be longer, but it could be 50 to 75 years, something like that. I'm pretty sure I remember that.
So I think, from my point, the downside, Bruce, to putting bigger rocks is you're also going to have larger voids. So it's a trade-off. Not saying one way or the other, just that's the trade-off. A lot of times just the standard rock walls with the large 2 to 5 foot boulders could look really poor depending on the quality of the rock and the quality of the person installing them. With these, at least we know what we're getting, which I kind of like that. And then, 50 years, that's a little bit of a bummer, but these are probably worth 20 million in 50 years and they can afford to replace the walls, I guess, or they'll come up with some super, computerized version of a wall. They don't even need wires. I don't know. Won't be our problem, I guess, but would be nice if they lasted longer. But I like to Bruce's point, like it is gonna decay and need maintenance. But overall, my personal opinion is I like them. I like that we know what we're gonna get. I agree. If we can kind of screen both in front of them, whether it's tall grasses and trees and kind of shrubbery like that, then I like that option.
Yeah, my only comment would be I think I had requested him to show what was in his original plan, because when I went over there early on when the sales model first opened, they had their brochures and it looked like masonry stacked wall, not just loose stack wall like we have around most of town. It looked very finished and very really nice. I couldn't believe they were going to put that much stone and masonry in there. I've been back, so he hasn't complied with that request, I guess, to see what was his original plan. But there are other products, and I think that's what Tony was mentioning earlier, that if you look over at the Jordan L. Parkway, they have these, they're masonry. They look like stone, but they're just these big, kind of big blocks that are empty behind, and they fill them with sand or some other dirt material. And they have the same, probably same or better structural and they ability as these kinds of walls, and they stack on each other. It's kind of like building, you know, as a homeowner would go to Home Depot and build some of those stacked walls that fit together. That's what these things are. And we were just looking for some alternatives, and we're not seeing alternative. We're just seeing some landscape of his existing product. So that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, I didn't get any additional materials from him other than what you guys have in front of you. I do know that when we met out on site, there was a discussion. This would have been before our last meeting, actually, though. There was a discussion with regard to stacking some blocks. And I know that there was some hesitancy on the part of Chris and the designers, because they were worried that that would be it might be too much. It might feel too solid, right? That it could feel a little bit industrial, and they didn't want to, you know, make it such that the blocks were too large. You know, sometimes you'll see those kinds of stacked blocks, almost like you were talking about, Bruce, almost under like interstate over ramps, that kind of thing. They're kind of solid, they're big. I think there was a concern with those being a little bit out of scale for here. I think Chris might have had that concern. And maybe the landscape architect too, I'm not sure.
There definitely are those that are very industrial looking, like under bridges and whatnot. But again, I just point over to Jordanelle, all along the Jordanelle where they had to do retaining. They've got these stacked blocks that look like a masonry wall. And again, you know, I'd like, especially when a developer comes to us after having started something that wasn't approved, you know, I just wish they would come and say, well, here's what we were originally approved for, and here's what we'd like to change. So we have kind of the before and after. This is more of, well, I started to do this, would you please approve it? And
no, there's no doubt that they started, we stopped them. There's no doubt about that. And Bruce, I think on his original subdivision plans, we didn't review them, but I think on his original subdivision plans, I think he did have stacked rock. So in his brochure, if he had kind of a more masonry look, he was probably already thinking, he wanted to maybe kind of move toward this more modern look. I'm gonna guess. I'm speculating, of course, but I think on his original, he had the stacked rock, because that was our discussion the last time we met. Is it going back to stacked rock, or is it keeping this kind of gabion basket wall? And so I'm going to suspect that what he showed in his, what you saw in his brochures might have been more of an artist rendering, and maybe they were like I said, starting to think we want to move towards something a little bit more solid, a little bit more angular, I'm guessing.
yeah, I tried to find something on our teams, you know, that had some of that early planning stuff, and I can't find any.
Find it either. Yeah, but I remember Ryan saying that it was stacked rock initially, and then they chose to go with the gabion baskets. And so I'm guessing this was that replacement.
Is this going before the town council, or
No, actually, this one, again, this is technically, you know, based upon the prior code, and we didn't have a lot of detail in the prior code, and so there's a significant amount of flexibility. We just wanted to kind of bring this to you guys to make sure we got your input, and as Ryan and I work with him to finalize this, that we incorporate, if you think there needs to be more landscaping, less landscaping. You noted bigger rocks. We'll talk to them about that and keep in a variation. But it's really to get input so that we can take that back to him. There were no specific requirements in our prior code.
Actually like the look of the wall. I do like the larger rocks as well, and I guess that there's a a positive and a negative to that. I think I like it also because it is different. It's different than what we have here in Hideout and in Rustler. And I love the part about the landscaping in the front and blending it in. I was comment about the largeness of the trees also. Thank you, Rachel. But I would prefer a larger rock than what is shown in what he has done already. I think that just looks a little classier. Is that the right word? A little more finished.
Yeah, maybe if there is a mix, so that you can get a tighter fit, with smaller rocks filling some of the voids.
Right, and that would be fine.
But seeing more of the larger rock, as he mentioned to us, Chris did, he thought that the rock looked exactly like, or at least looked good compared to what he's using on the surfaces of the front of the building. And again, I looked at it and I'm going, same color, but other than that, there's not a lot of similarity. So I think if we can get a mix,
Okay.
and I'm not crazy about it, but I get it. It's a good structure. If we can get a mix that makes it look more like what this picture looks like, then I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll work with them on that. That's a fair request.
Tony, are we taking any public comment? I see a hand raised.
No, this is just a work session for the planning commission.
And we don't vote on this. They're just looking for our input, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
So when they put the grasses in, these are going to be hopefully not the kind of native grasses that they've been trying to grow around shoreline, because that hasn't worked too well.
No, we'll work with them closely on the grasses. And I will tell you this, Seth Bachholt, the landscape architect, he does quality work throughout the state, throughout the nation. Actually, he's a very good quality landscape architect.
Can they put any even small, like sawgrass or whatever, the kind of the tall growing grasses in front of it, or it has to be all like just native?
I will coordinate that with Ryan. Again, we're very limited on the amount of irrigation that you can put in any of these areas just to ensure structural stability. So I'll coordinate that with Ryan.
But there'll be some natural, like sage and things like that will naturally come into this area.
Natives can be sage, native grasses, etc., can all be used. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, the more, again, to block or at least break it up to get a little bit more height than just the natural grasses would be, I think, something that they could do to make it look a little bit nicer.
Mm-hmm. We'll work with them on that. And these are kind of very similar issues that we've had to address in Deer Springs, et cetera, right? With the retaining walls, trying to expand the terracing, the width of the terracing so that we can get, quality materials in there, and that we can get materials that will get, that will reach a certain size. They're already going to be in a compromised position, right? It's a hard place to grow. It's like growing a street tree in an urban environment. It's already stressed and compromised, right? These are a little bit too. And so the more width we can always achieve in terms of our terracing, the better landscaping, the better softening, the better breaks that we can get. So yeah, what we're pushing for out in Deer Springs, waters, shoreline, et cetera, same thing that we're pushing here. And we'll work with the landscape architect. Yeah. Any other questions? And again, as we're working through this, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Ryan as we walk through this. If there's something that I don't know, I can certainly get Chris Ensign back in here and make sure that he addresses it. But he has been quite good to work with.
Do any of the board members have any questions? Any more questions?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so being that was the only item on the agenda,
Easy meeting.
Thomas, you basically know how we feel in regards to maybe seeing some more, little bit.
I'll
Well,
work with
the,
Chris,
I'm-
Seth, yep.
Yeah. All right. So that being said, and then no other items on the agenda, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Do I get a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, so then we'll take a vote. Bruce,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Glynis,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and Tony's a yes. One other issue I just want to raise to everybody that's on. Just think about if you would like to start getting back together in person rather than Zoom. And if you do, just, or don't, either way, if you would email me during the week next week and let me know, and then I'll talk to the mayor and Alicia about it, and we'll see if it'll be worth it. I don't know if they will still let us, if they will let us have people come to the meetings or not. I'll have to find out some more details, but before I go any further, I just want to see how everybody's feelings are about that. So I would appreciate it if you can get back to me by the end of next week with that, so I can get in touch with the mayor. Okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
All right. That being said, I think we've set a record for the shortest planning commission meeting in the history of Hideout. But thank you all very much.
Thank you. Enjoy your night.
Thanks a
Yeah.
All right, have a good night, guys.
Hope to see you guys in person next time.
Yes.
Bye.
All right,
All right.
Bye.
good night.